Welcome back to another edition of In the Kitchen on Life with Diana and Nick. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my recipe and techniques for making sourdough bread. There are a lot of different recipes out there, but I like mine because it's low maintenance, almost no kneading, and only 4 ingredients, which is great for anybody who has sensitivity to additives. Okay, now let's talk about the ingredients. The first thing you'll need is sourdough starter, which you can see in Nick's video about how to make sourdough starter from scratch. You can also buy it as a powder and reconstitute it, but his video is great about explaining how to feed and care and create a starter. You'll need water, preferably filtered. You'll need at least bread flour. I like to do a combination of bread flour and whole wheat flour, about 3 to 1. And then you'll need salt. For equipment, you will need a kitchen scale. A KitchenAid mixer is best, easiest anyway. So the bowl, you'll need a measuring cup that is larger than 2 cups, and I'll explain why later. You'll need your dough hook for your KitchenAid, a measuring cup that you can measure out 1 cup of items, a nice sturdy spatula, and some measuring spoons. Now let's get to mixing. All right, let's measure out our dry ingredients. So I just put the bowl directly onto my kitchen scale and turn it on so that the bowl is already incorporated and you start at 0. Next, I'm going to add 4 ounces of whole wheat flour. And it's okay if you add a little bit more. If you're a perfectionist, you can scoop it back out. If you're not a perfectionist, I'll scoop out a little bit. If you're not a perfectionist, you can just leave it in there. The total amount you're gonna go for is 1 pound. Now that's good. Okay, now, you're gonna next put in your bread flour up to 1 pound, or 16 ounces, depending on how your scale works. And again, if you put a little bit too much, which I just did, and I almost always do, you can just take it back out until your scale reads 1 pound. Last thing is I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon, a generous teaspoon of salt. And that's it for our dry ingredients. So you'll need to measure out 10.5 ounces of water using your kitchen scale in a container that's larger than 2 cups. I have warmed this a little bit in the microwave on about 30 seconds, and you want it warmer than room temperature to help the yeast activate, and then not so hot that when you touch it, it stings your finger. Now let's measure out our 1 cup. I like to dip the cup in here to help prevent the starter from sticking. And you can see it's very, ooh, it's gonna be good. It's very stringy. We do 1, 2, and the amount doesn't have to be perfect. It's just the more you have, the faster it will rise. Okay, now I'm gonna mix it up and incorporate it in here so that when I pour it into the dry ingredients, it will incorporate much faster and not get lumps of. Now that we have our wet and dry ingredients ready, we're gonna do the mixing. So I'm gonna put my dough hook onto the KitchenAid, and then I will put the dry ingredients in first, allow the dough hook to mix it up, and then I will slowly pour in the wet ingredients until it incorporates fully. see, there's no evidence of flour still left, and the dough is nice and sort of congealed. And when we pull up the dough hook, you can see how the dough sort of stretches off of it. So that means it's done. Just gonna scrape it off here and sort of scrape it on the sides. Take my dough hook out and look at that. That's all set. Now that our dough is all mixed up, it's ready to do the first rise. What I like to do is cover it with plastic wrap, nice and tight. And then to help keep it warm, even though we're inside, it helps it rise faster if you just sort of surround it in a towel. So I take a towel long ways and wrap it around to help keep the heat that's already in there from the warm water, as well as the heat that the yeast will produce. And I put it on, because this is a metal bowl, I put it on a pot holder or trivet or whatever to keep it warmer off the counter. Then we're gonna let this sit all day. And next step will be tonight. How is that? Whew. All right, let me put this over here.
Oh, honey, do you tell them about cleaning up?
Oh, shoot. I did forget to mention two very important things. One is make sure that anything you've worked with your dough or your starter, that you make sure and clean it up immediately or soak it, because water and flour equals glue. Second important thing is to make sure to feed your starter, because right now this is about 2 tablespoons and it's mostly fed, mostly eaten all of the carbohydrates in here. And if we don't feed it, it's gonna die. So be sure to feed that. And for instructions on how to care and feed your starter, watch Nick's video. And thanks everybody for joining me in the kitchen this morning. And I hope you have a great day. And thanks for joining us on Life with Diana and Nick. Our sourdough bread has been sitting out at room temperature all day. So let's unwrap it and see what it looks like. See if it's ready to put in the refrigerator. Okay, so you can see it's got more volume than it did before. That's due to the air bubbles of the yeast feeding on the flour that we mixed it with. It looks like it's pretty good. Can smell a little bit of an aroma here. So I think it's ready to put in the fridge overnight. And in the morning, we'll unwrap it and finish the last few steps. Morning, everybody. Coffee. Well, it is morning and our sourdough has been in the refrigerator overnight. We do this for 2 reasons. One is to allow it to sour, and the other is to calm the yeast down so that there is still yeast activity left for when we bake our bread and it actually creates the bubbles. For this part, you're gonna need all-purpose flour, about 2 to 3 tablespoons, a spatula, your cooking vessel, preferably in clay, and you're also gonna need a soft, lightly, not tightly woven cloth to put over it while it rises. Let's go get our sourdough. All right, let's see what it looks like. It looks good. What you're gonna notice when you look at it is that it's not gonna have the mound that it did before we put it in the refrigerator last night. What it's going to do is sort of flatten down, and you'll see a little bit of condensation or liquid around the outside. And what that's going to do, what that's from is the heat, and also could be from the yeast activity. We're ready to take it out of the bowl now. I'll go ahead and put I usually do 2 heaping tablespoons of flour. And then I spread it with my spatula so that the dough has a nice place to land that's not going to stick to the board. It also coats my spatula so that as I take the dough out, it doesn't stick. So I sort of loosen it around the edges, and then I go down to the bottom And you can see that it's a little stiff, yet still malleable, and that's the perfect thing. You wanna make sure you do this right out of the fridge, because if you wait too long and sit out on the counter, and I've done this before, if you let it sit on the counter, it gets softer and harder to contain when you're doing the kneading. Other thing, make sure you take off any jewelry, otherwise it's gonna get caked with dough. The way you wanna do this is you sort of pull from the bottom and sort of incorporate into the middle. I will take some from the side, push it down into the middle. Our goal in doing this, and I guess it is kind of kneading, but it's not really kneading. It's not the hard kneading. The goal of this is to get a nice layer of flour on the top, and also to incorporate a little flour to give it a little extra food to rise and to shape. Right now, we have actually a really nice shape if we were using a round, typical sourdough vessel. However, ours is elongated today. So what I do to make it elongated is I sort of push down from the top and create like a bar, sort of more of a loaf-like. And it's about 8-9 inches long. Once I got this here, I'm gonna put the sort of the seam part at the bottom, and then I'm gonna lay it in here. And you can put a little layer of olive oil in there like I did, or if your vessel is seasoned, then you don't need to worry about it. Now I'm gonna cover it with my nice soft cloth, and I'm gonna let it sit and rise at room temperature for our second rise for about an hour and a half. And then we'll be ready to cook. Okay, it's been an hour and a half that our bread has rested and risen. Let's take a look at it. Ooh, so right away you can see it's longer than it was when I put it in there, and it's higher. And this is actually perfect time to go ahead and cook it. And now we're ready to bake. We're gonna go ahead and put the cover onto our baking vessel. And we're gonna put this in a cold oven. So I haven't turned it on yet. It goes into the cold oven in a middle rack. Now we're gonna turn our oven on to 425, normal bake. And we're gonna set our timer for 40 minutes. We'll cook it with the top on for 40 minutes, and then when the timer goes off, we'll take the lid off and let it bake for an additional 10 minutes for it to brown and finish up cooking. Our timer's gone off, and now it's time to take the lid off the bread. It's looking good already. Now we'll close it back up, set our timer for 10 more minutes to let the bread finish baking and to brown. Okay, our timer's gone off, and it's time to take the finished bread out of the oven. So look at that. It's actually grown quite a bit, and it's filled out the pan. This is kind of warm. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna immediately turn it out and put it on a cooling rack. And then in about 20 minutes, we can taste it. I can't wait. All right, so our bread has cooled sufficiently enough that we can cut it and give it a taste. Wow, now that I've cut that open, that sourdough smell is really coming out. It smells so amazing. Oh, it's gonna be awesome. And I can't decide if I want to use butter on my warm sourdough bread or my homemade Nutella. So I'm gonna have some of each. By the way, if you like Nutella, I have a video on our channel about making the best homemade Nutella recipe, and it is the best. So give it a try. Now, the moment of truth. Is there anything better than fresh sourdough with butter? I don't know. Now, dessert. Oh, I wish I could convey to you how awesome this is through the video, but I can't. So you're gonna have to try our recipe. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.